Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to Summit 22. My name is Paul Wummering and I'm the field CTO running worldwide solution architecture at Aerospike. And with me is Sajjad Hussain, who is the chief architect and VP of advanced technology at one of our key partners, Wipro. And I've had the pleasure working with Sajjad and his team over the past few months on a very interesting project, the migrating of HBase to Aerospike for Edge and System of Record Applications, or SOR for short. The next few slides, Sajjad will walk through what we've come up with and the approach and why we did this. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Sajjad and you take it away.
Thank you, Paul. A brief introduction of what we do in our group. We help our clients build large-scale systems that serve millions of users, process billions of transactions every day, and store trillions of records. And these are adaptive systems powered by AI and machine learning models. And we combine symbolic and sub-symbolic architectures in pursuit of explainable, trustworthy AI. And over the last dozen years or so that we've been doing this kind of work, we've seen one dominant secular trend, and that is the emergence of mobile web and IoT architectures. And as you look at the performance and the resilience and security requirements of these architectures, it is becoming amply clear that the key problems to solve reside in the data tier. And the challenge that we've seen that the present day data tier needs to address is the ability to deliver real-time, low latency performance at massive scale. And we're starting to see Aerospike beginning to fill many of these gaps that present-day data storage systems are not capable of offering. And as you unpack this mobile web or IoT architectures, whether it's at the edge or on the cloud, the demand for performance has never been greater. So, and we're really happy to have discovered Aerospike as a system that scales, delivering consistent, low latency and high performance as we scale the systems for higher and higher volumes of data. With this, I'll request Paul to introduce Aerospike briefly before I continue with what we're doing jointly with Paul and his team.
Thanks, Sajjad. As you can see on the slide, and as you heard earlier today, some of the features in Aerospike 6.0. The interesting thing about this offering is that having the ability to do real-time consumption of data from upstream systems such as Kafka or Pulsar are key in this solution we've built, supporting complex objects like JSON, and then with the introduction of some of the new technologies like parallel secondary indices and batch APIs makes this a very interesting offering for potential customers. And also a more open standard interface through SQL, through the Presto Trino connector, or coming in through Spark, playing in the AI ML space. All of these components are part of the solution that we came up with Wipro. And some of the great underlying capabilities of Aerospike Database 6. I am truly impressed by the system of record capabilities the database has. Is sort of the brass ring of databases, which we have some customers running as SOR. And then some of the key features such as strong consistency and running in all flash. But even more important, this database is resilient. It just simply doesn't go down. And that's unheard of in the database world. Next slide, Sajjad. So the main themes of Aerospike Database 6.0 are these three icons on the screen: massively parallel secondary indices, far greater than what was offered prior, and the ability to have not only these indices running at speeds of the primary index, but also being used to index complex data models, documents, JSON, complex data types, opening up new avenues where Aerospike can be used and leveraged in this migration effort. And then last but not least, to increase throughput through batch processing, bulk writes, for example, cut down on the latency, the network time and such. But these three major themes branch Aerospike 6.0 into different avenues that weren't available before. And then you wrap all that up with the new connectors or the enhancements to the existing connectors, allows us to play in the enterprise space to help customers migrate from legacy systems like HBase back into the Aerospike database. Back to you, Sajad.
Thank you, Paul. And that's a compelling argument, right? A database that delivers unyielding high performance, even as it scales to petascale data sets. And we've experienced this in, at least in one of our client engagements, the ability to deliver consistent low latency as we scale the systems is what really attracted us to this database. And we've been building systems of record, systems of engagement powered by a variety of different data tier technologies. But as we begin to embrace Aerospike, the question really is, how do we migrate these estates from existing data systems to Aerospike? As Paul described earlier on, we've been working closely with Paul and his team in building these migration solutions. And these are proven solutions with design templates that clearly articulate how to perform these migrations, guided by rigorous methodologies. And we're working jointly in identifying both open source tools as well as building proprietary tools to bridge any gaps to help our joint customers migrate to the Aerospike database. And the clear vision for us together here is to help our clients migrate to the systems, hundreds and hundreds of terabytes out there, and thereby deliver on the promise of reducing the total cost of ownership of these systems. And we begin with HBase, HBase being the dominant choice, the goal being not to stop at HBase, but continue on with a variety of other data stores that are grayed out here. And we've jointly worked with Paul in evolving a rigorous methodology that begins by, at the very minimum, documenting the migration approach. We call these runbooks. These runbooks describe a migration framework, migration tools and architectures, and a catalog of proprietary tools and open source tools that will aid us in this migration effort. As we run these pilot migrations, we are looking at scaling this through a joint migration factory that performs both data migration as well as application migrations, followed by maintenance and support. And if we double click into the migration of HBase to Aerospike, there are 4 key elements that really stand out. The first thing is, of course, the data model. The data models are different, but what we've figured out is it's not really hard to help migrate applications that use HBase to applications that would use Aerospike. The schema mapping, we got to deal with the white columns. Most importantly, we'll leverage some of the new capabilities in Aerospike called secondary indexes, user-defined functions. And while HBase uses the HDFS file store, Aerospike is optimized to use a flash optimized in-memory capability that is key to delivering the performance that Aerospike delivers. Beyond that, the other considerations are consistency and the transaction model. Aerospike offers immediate consistency for local clusters and eventual consistency for cross data center capabilities. And these two capabilities are more than adequate to meet the needs of the strong consistency at row level that HBase delivers. Then in terms of the applications, I think Aerospike has the API, native API. But in order to enable HBase applications to run unchanged on the Aerospike database, we are building a proxy layer that delivers HBase-like capability, HBase API on the front end, and maps HBase APIs onto the Aerospike APIs in the backend, thereby allowing you to, seamlessly and friction-free manner migrate HBase applications. And I've already stated this earlier. Aerospike is highly optimized for using the NVMe flash for persistent cache as well as for data store to deliver on the promise of real-time capabilities. And really, we break down this migration into two broad segments. The database migration itself, as I said earlier on, comprises of mapping the schema using a schema translation tool, then capturing a snapshot of the HBase database and migrating it lock, stock, and barrel to Aerospike. And while this, even as you're migrating the snapshot to the Aerospike database, there might be trickle changes occurring on the HBase database. So we are looking at using a CDC replication tool to capture the trickle changes and transfer them over and reapply them onto Aerospike. So far that I've dealt with only the data tier. On the application side, we have two choices. If the goal is to migrate these applications unchanged, then we are building a client API proxy that allows the HBase clients to use this proxy and continue to run on Aerospike unchanged. The other alternative is, if you're looking at true native high performance, our recommendation is to actually modify the HBase client applications to use the Aerospike library. So with that, we believe we've covered at a high level, what it takes to migrate HBase applications to Aerospike. And I'll let Paul help us conclude this conversation with a summary of everything we discussed so far.
Yeah, so the migration factory is the simple goal of ease of migration, frictionless, to make customers want to migrate to Aerospike, either through a very quick migration by not changing their application and using the drop-in library that we're going to build, and where that is in the case where latency is not that important. And they just need to get off HBase. And then the other side is we'll re-architect your application for high throughput, low latency. But backing all of that up will be all of the items that Sajjad mentioned in terms of how-tos and documentation and run books on making sure that this scales with the power of the factory behind. And then, if you're going forward, the migration factory will be able to scale up, not just in terms of producing more migrations in one dimension, but migrating from other sources in another dimension, and allows Aerospike to be deployed and implemented and used all around the globe, getting people off these legacy systems. And then, what the benefit of all this is great TCO. I think I like the word Aerospike is a highly efficient database. What some people need 200 nodes to do, we can do in 20. More uptime, a highly resilient, well above 5 nines uptime, which is critical. And then all the new capabilities of 6.0 can be leveraged, whether it's complex data objects like JSON, or bringing in other connectors such as the Trino Presto or Spark connector. So you have different consumers of the data stored in Aerospike, but the data being delivered in a highly parallel, highly efficient manner. And then if the data needs to be more real-time or more instant, using other connectors upstream like Kafka to push the data in to Aerospike. And then all of this is deployed anywhere, on-prem, cloud, VPC, our ACMS offering, and so on. But we believe that this whole migration effort in conjunction with the team at Wipro is going to open up a lot of avenues going forward for Aerospike, our partners and customers. Sajad, just a couple open questions on this migration effort. What are edge applications, and what kind of migration considerations should people take into account when they come upon that edge world?
Yeah, there's a broad spectrum of these applications increasingly, especially with 5G pushing the bounds of compute and pushing it closer and closer to the point of service consumption. We're starting to see this whole new class of edge applications. I can give you some examples. We are working with a phone manufacturing company with many factories in East Asia. And we're helping them build out automation for collecting data and performing some analysis at the edge, close to where the phone products are being built. That's clearly an example of Industry 4.0 requiring edge applications that deliver a variety of rich services, from basic, accounting of devices manufactured to more sophisticated applications that monitor quality, that monitor conformance to standards, and so on. So that's one class of edge applications that we have seen. On the other extreme end, we're working with gaming companies, particularly building first-person shooter games. And these games need to deliver on the promise of extreme performance, extreme low latency. And obviously, one way to do this is by building out these services closer to the point of consumption at the edge, once again. And out there again, I think in each of these cases, the requirement is to build resilient systems that can operate in environments that have very less or no IT presence, yet deliver on stringent performance goals, deliver stringent resilience and fault tolerance goals, and operate in a semi-autonomous fashion. And these applications increasingly, the development tools, the deployment tool chains are being built to allow the deployment of the edge and the corresponding core through a single tool chain, and we're also starting to see the cloud providers like Amazon and Microsoft enhance their development and CI/CD tool chains that allow you to build and deploy these applications both at the edge and on the core, on the cloud, seamlessly. So that's facilitating ever greater movement of these applications to the edge.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Now, likewise, we talked about system of record, or SOR applications. What are some of the migration considerations that you have to look at if you have a system of record that you want to move to Aerospike?
Yeah, these systems of records are characterized by massive scale data sets. And I think, and increasingly as this systems scale to deliver higher and higher volumes of transactions, they still need to deliver consistent low latency. The other thing that's even more dominant for these systems of records is the need to keep the systems running despite failures around you. And what does it take to run these systems in a fault-tolerant, resilient fashion, despite seeing all kinds of failures around you? Now, so that mandates that you have the ability to replicate data from the systems to other data centers across a wide area network. And as we do so, there's an emerging design paradigm around building active systems. What does it take to build active systems? And what are the latency windows for replication? And how do you do all of this in a secure fashion, in a secure manner? So this is a big, set of asks. And what we are starting to see is that Aerospike is actually measuring up to these kinds of objectives as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. One last question before we conclude. What other application considerations are there in this migration world that we've been talking about?
Yeah, we clearly looked at two broad, approaches to migrating applications. One is to avoid disrupting these applications as much as we can. So therefore, there was that need to provide the proxy to allow HBase applications to integrate into and transact with Aerospike Database in the backend. And the other need is, if you're looking at, if your concern is performance, sheer performance, then I think, the pathway here is to see whether you can, modify the application to use the Aerospike API in place of, the other API, which is the HBase API. And this allows you to use the intelligent client that Aerospike delivers that has, some benefits, which give you additional performance because it's aware of how the data is laid out on the Aerospike database. And it also deals with considerations of availability, resilience, and fault tolerance in the face of failures.
Okay, so that concludes the migration session from HBase into Aerospike. And what we have done is created an email address called migrations@aerospike.com. You can send requests there, and I believe it also can be used by customers or partners, and we'll get notified of potential use cases where this could be addressed. But I want to thank Sajad for taking the time out of his schedule to work with us, not only on the project for the last few months, but also putting together this presentation for Summit. And I hope that everybody has a good Summit going forward for the rest of the day. And I thank you for your time. Thank you, Sajad.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.